Hello, Internet. Just wanted to make a quick video here, kind of going over the answers to some questions that I see getting presented a lot of times in the various modded Minecraft subreddits that I frequent. One of the biggest ones is, how do I set up auto-crafting in Applied Energistics? And also, why isn't this working? And I'll get to that second one here in a second, but you can see right here behind me, we actually have the very most basic, bare bones automatic crafting system necessary in Applied Energistics. And you can set this up in a survival world very easily. All you need to get it started is some kind of an energy acceptor along with some kind of an energy source. Here I'm using a creative energy battery just because they're very easy to get and set up. I have a ME terminal, and you can use a terminal or you can use a crafting terminal. They're both exactly the same. The only difference is that this one does not allow you to craft things in it. You will also need a pattern terminal, which allows you access to your ME inventory through the sequence up here, and also has this pattern terminal area down here. And we'll get to how you use this here in just a second. You'll also need some form of storage for your items within your ME system. ME systems are kind of useless without storage. You can use an ME drive like I have set up here with a 64K storage cell. You can also make use of the ME storage bus and any other storage block that you choose to use, whether that's vanilla chests, you can use filing cabinets, you can use storage drawers. You can see I have installed here in this mod pack as well. You will then need to have some form of crafting storage. You can use the 1K crafting storage. The basic Applied Energistics comes with crafting storages that go all the way up to 64K. There's also Extra Cells mod, I believe it's called, which adds much larger crafting storage blocks. The last two things that you will need is a molecular assembler and an interface. The molecular assembler, you see, has a crafting table in here, and the molecular assembler acts as your crafter. There's also a spot here for you to put your crafting pattern into, but we're not going to be using that, as well as upgrade slots here, and these will actually take acceleration cards. I don't believe they will take anything else. In any case, there's no reason to put anything other than an acceleration card into that. And we'll get to how you use those in a minute. But that's the basic form of a autocrafter. That's really all you need to get it to work. You will also want to have some form of an energy cell. These are just always a good idea to put on your network as soon as you can make them. And you can see here, you can start off with just the basic energy cell, and you can go all the way up to the dense energy cell. And if you look here, they're pretty easy to make, provided your mod pack hasn't changed the recipe at all. You can use regular Certus, charged Certus, or pure Certus. Pretty much any form of Certus quartz will make it. And then to make the dense energy cell, it's simply 8 energy cells with a calculation processor in the middle. So these are usually the upgrade that you make after you've set up your ME system. Not required to make it work. We can actually take this out and it will all still work just fine. But it is very handy to have in there, just because then if your energy source runs out, or if you're trying to dump a large amount of items into your ME system all at once and you don't have an energy cell, you will actually have the issue where half of them will go in and then the other half will just stay in your inventory. To use your pattern terminal, the way that you do it is, first off, you need some items in there, and we're going to just use some mystical agriculture stone essence. So now we have a bunch of stone essence in here. We don't want that in there quite yet. You will also need items to put in here, and these are the blank pattern item. And again, these are pretty easy to make. They require some resources. You're probably gonna, one of the first things that I usually set up in my autocrafter is a recipe for this item itself. So we'll just grab a stack of that. We'll put it right here. This slot right here can take 1 stack at a time. It cannot take more than a stack. Then what you do is you take your item out of here, and you don't actually need to have 64. You just need to have 1. And you just then place the item into your pattern terminal in whatever pattern creates the item that you're looking for. So mystical agriculture, this recipe creates cobblestone, this recipe creates smooth stone. in 112. If you get this and you're like, oh, I didn't actually want smooth stone, I wanted cobblestone, you can just click that. It changes the recipe back out. This button right here is your or dictionary substitutions button. Currently, it is set to not allow or dictionary substitutions. And what that means is that if you put an item into this pattern terminal that has an or dictionary entry, so for example, stone, cobblestone here, you can see has a or dictionary entry of cobblestone. If you put that into there and you have some other mod that adds another block which is equivalent in that mod to cobblestone, turning this on, and you can see it turns red here at the back end, this will actually allow your Applied Energistics system to substitute out other things that match that or dictionary. So in this case, you could actually substitute out the cobblestone, vanilla cobblestone, for a modded version of the same thing. Sometimes you want to have this on, sometimes you want to have it off. Once you have this set up, you then click encode pattern, and you get this nifty little encoded pattern right here. You can take that out, put it in your inventory, and as you can see in your inventory, it shows up as an encoded pattern. It's a little different icon than the basic one, which helps you keep them straight. If you have a bunch of these in your inventory, you can press shift and it will show you the block that it will create. Also, obviously, if you hover over it, it will tell you what it is crafting, what it is using to craft it, and whether or not you have or dictionary substitutions turned on. Then you take this and into an interface right here in the bottom, you put it in there, and now when we go over here and look at it, we now have cobblestone showing up in our terminal. This button right here will allow you to toggle between either viewing the stored items, which is the stored items and craftable items, which is what it is set to right now. So you see we have items that are stored and items that are craftable. If we click it once, it will change it to only showing stored items. So as you can see, the cobblestone recipe disappeared. If you click it again, it will show you only craftable items. This is handy if you have some cobblestone in here already, then you can switch it to that and you will see that you have your recipe, and that'll allow you access to it. And you click it again, it takes you back to the beginning. So to get this going, we just click on it, and this asks us how many do we want. And you can put any number in here that you want. You can't do negatives, obviously. But if we just say we want 10,000 of these, then you hit next, and it will tell us how many raw materials we need and how many is going to be produced. And if you hover over it, you can see it's actually going to create a few more than how many I asked it for. And that's because the ME system knows that this block comes out. Each recipe produces 32. So that is the minimum that it would need to craft to create the 10,000 that I asked it for. Now, obviously, I don't have enough stone essence in here, so I get no crafting CPUs are available. We cancel out of it, and we ask it for something a little bit more reasonable, like let's just say we want 10. Same deal. This is going to take 8, and it's going to make 32. Now, it can't make 10 because the recipe that it has creates 32. If we hit start, it's going to go really fast. So there it goes. Now we've got 32 cobblestone in our ME system. A trick that a lot of people don't seem to know about, if you have items in here and you want to craft more, like say I need 100 cobblestone and I already have 32 in here, one thing a lot of people do is they'll take this out, they'll put it in their inventory, and then they'll activate the craft. Instead of doing that, you can actually middle mouse click on the block and it will pull up your crafting window. And then you can click this to get out of it. So that's a handy way if you do actually need that. So now that we have enough stone essence in there, if I hit craft, it will tell me, I can see this is how much it's going to use, this is how much it's going to produce. Now, here's an issue that comes up is we have no crafting CPUs are available. And this is, if you remember, the same message that happened when I didn't have enough raw material. The difference here is that this actually shows me this is clickable. And if I click this, it would actually switch between the various crafting CPUs that I have, but since I only have one, it doesn't do anything. What it shows me up here is that this is going to use 12,000, almost 13,000 bytes. And if I back out of here, my crafting storage is only 1K, which means that I need a bigger crafting CPU. Now, the crafting CPU in Applied Energistics is a multi-block structure. This is your crafting CPU. This is also a crafting CPU. This is not a crafting CPU. You can tell by the way that the block's textures have changed. This is a crafting CPU. Now this is a 2K crafting CPU, which is not going to be enough for the one that we want. So we're going to take this all out of here. And we're going to grab ourselves a 64K crafting storage unit. Drop that down. Now we have a 64K crafting storage. Okay. We can then go in here and we can order our 10,000 cobblestone. That, and this button right here will allow you to switch between your different crafting CPUs, and this will actually tell you how much storage the CPU has, as well as how many coprocessors it has. And we'll get into what the coprocessors are used for here in a second. So this is useful if you have, say, a smaller order, because a lot of times this will default to your largest CPU. So if you have a huge CPU and then you have a small CPU, you don't want to use your huge CPU for an order that will fit in your small CPU if you have a larger order that you're about to put in. Anyway, once we hit start, it will then start generating. And if we go over here, we can actually watch as it generates this block. And you can click inside here and you can see what it's doing. And it's actually kind of cool to watch. This is where your acceleration cards come in. This will make this bar go faster, which will produce materials quicker. That is the first way that you can actually accelerate your ME crafting. Another way that you can accelerate it is by adding more molecular assemblers. And this only works on the block type ME interface, but you do it just like this. And as you can see, it's adding additional craftings to... It's now using multiple molecular assemblers. But as you'll notice, it isn't using all of them. There's these three right here in the middle that are still empty. And the reason why it's not using all of the crafting CPUs that are, or the molecular assemblers that are available to it, is because there's only the one crafting storage here. So if we go in here, and you can go in here and cancel it, it'll stop the crafting from happening. Yeah, you can just click on your CPU and that'll give you whatever it is using. We can add these guys to our storage. And these are crafting co-processing units. And what these do is each one of these that you add allows the CPU to use another molecular assembler. So if we do that, we start it going, we can see that it is now using all 6 of them. Because we added this coprocessor, it's now using more. Now, if we add a, where'd I put it? Would add a storage unit, this makes the size of it bigger, but does not actually allow it to use any more molecular assemblers than it used previously. In order to use more molecular assemblers, you do have to add crafting coprocessors. And you don't want to add or remove blocks to your CPU while you have a recipe going, because it'll break the recipe. If we go back in here, we'll see that our crafting job has been canceled, and it was canceled by me breaking the block, the crafting CPU block. So, one storage, one coprocessor will allow it to use all 6 molecular assemblers, and that is a configurable amount, how many additional things the coprocessor allows. So if you're in a mod pack and you put down a second coprocessor or a coprocessor and it doesn't use all of the available interface or assemblers, your mod pack might have changed the configuration. So what you can do is you can just hold shift, put one there, and then put something like a crafting monitor on there. That creates a valid crafting CPU and will allow you to use more molecular assemblers at one time. The CPUs are also kind of handy because it will show you what recipe. I canceled that rather than starting it. Another one too, if you hold shift on this screen, then it will skip the ingredients screen and just immediately start it. That's what I meant to do. And my game just froze there for a second. So you can see that it is crafting. You can see how many that it's crafting. It's going quite quickly because we've got 6 assemblers that are working on it all at the same time. So it's going to be done here in a minute. unless I go in here and stop it. So same thing here. If you need to access your crafting status, you can click on this, and this will let you access all of your various CPUs by clicking this button right here, as opposed to clicking it on the CPU where you can see there isn't that button. Obviously, the setup only has the one, so there isn't anything else going on. Now, another thing that is important to note is that this particular setup like this, where I have it, only works with the block type ME interface. If I take an interface and I swap it to, if I can type, and I swap it to the panel style ME interface, which is this guy right here, which you get by just putting this into a crafting grid, and it will put this one out, and you can do it vice versa. If we take that out and we swap it for one of these, you can now see that my smart cable here only shows 4 devices, and this device shows as offline. In order to actually have that work, it needs to go here. Now you can see I show 5 channels, and the device is online. You can then put your pattern into that, and it shows up right here. The downside to doing this is that you cannot add additional molecular assemblers. If you put them on going like that, it will still only use the one that it is directly attached to. We go ahead and we start that up, and you can see that it's not working. Right, because this device is offline. So the ME interfaces in panel form will not pass data channels or power. So in order to do that, we'll have to add some cabling. Now we have cables. The assemblers are all powered. You can see they're all online, but it is only using the first one. So that is the downside to using the panel style interface. Another thing too that's worth pointing out is, or another thing that is also worth pointing out is your quartz wrench here, and there's both the Certus quartz and nether quartz. You can look at the recipes in JEI. These are very useful when dealing with Applied Energistics blocks. Holding shift and right clicking, it will actually break the block instantly. Obviously in creative we can just break them, but what's handy here is that if you break this in survival, if you break this, it will break both the interface and the cable. I'll show you right here. You can see they're both gone. But if we have the same setup and we take the wrench and we shift right click on the interface, it will just remove the interface without breaking the cable. So it can be very useful as a way to rearrange your network without absolutely destroying everything. So like I said, this particular design only works with the block type interface. And what's really nice about this is that you can actually set up a second one right next to it using exactly the same design and just having these two assemblers touching each other. And as you can see, my smart cable now reports that I have 6 devices on this network as opposed to just 8, because the data channel is passing from this assembler to the interface through these 2 assemblers and to this second interface. Now the question becomes, how do you access the interfaces to add more patterns to them without having to disassemble all of this? And the way that you do that is by using one of these ME interface terminals. These things are super useful and they're very handy to have. I recommend putting one next to your pattern terminal or wherever is convenient for you, but it works just like the rest of these. You simply place it on there. It does use a data channel, so that's something to keep in mind. But now, when you click on this, you gain access to all of your interfaces that are anywhere on your ME network. And from here, you can actually add or remove any pattern that is in the system. This is incredibly useful for if you have, say, a bunch of excess machines, like a bunch of mechanism machines that all have different recipes on them. You can actually name your interfaces in an anvil, so convert them to the panel form, take them over to an anvil, name them with whatever the machine is, go place that interface against the machine or against a chest in cases where you need to use a chest, and then you will be able to see what device, what machine that interface is attached to in the interface terminal. And as you can see, if we look in here, now no pattern, pattern, and if I go back and switch them back the other way, you can see that now the pattern is in here. So it's very useful, very handy to have, definitely worth building. Put it right next to your pattern terminal and go from there. But I think that just about covers it. Autocrafting in Applied Energistics is absolutely amazing. It is wonderful. It is definitely something that everybody should get into. If you are playing a mod pack that has Applied Energistics installed, definitely make use of the autocrafting, especially in some of these big mod packs where you have multiple steps. You can set up each stage in your autocraft, and you can actually have your system start from something like Mystical Agriculture Essence and go all the way up to a finished product without you having to do any of the steps. You just have to make sure that you got your patterns spread out. And remember that your interface can only use the assemblers that it is attached to, it is physically touching. It cannot use assemblers outside of that. So if you fill up an interface and you try to use all of those patterns all at the same time, it will not be able to do so. You will be able to put the order in for the recipe, but the recipe that you are putting in after the fact will have to wait until the earlier ones are finished. But that's all for now. If you like these kinds of things and you have some other questions, I have a few other ideas of some other fun things you can do with Applied Energistics and a couple of other mods to integrate them. But if you have any questions or comments, go ahead and leave them down below, and we'll see what we can get to from there. Otherwise, I will see you next time. Bye-bye.